What's the hardest part about backpacking? I surveyed 3,000 backpackers, and the majority said that the hardest part is getting a good night's sleep. I can hike for hours, be exhausted at the end of the day, and still have troubles getting a good sleep. But I've identified 5 issues that have led to me getting bad sleeps in the past and have developed tips and solutions to address each and every issue. If you're like me, you like to deflate your sleeping pad in order to get it to a softness that is comfortable, because laying on a fully inflated sleeping pad can be like laying on hard ground. But something that you might have also done that I've done is deflate your sleeping pad too much, especially with pads that are inherently uncomfortable. While deflating a sleeping pad can make it more comfortable, it also might be the reason why you're getting a bad night's sleep. Deflating your pad can actually make it sleep colder, because sleeping pads are warmest when they're fully inflated. And every little bit that you decrease the firmness decreases its warmth. If you deflate your pad so that your hip and your shoulder are just above the ground, those parts of the pad are going to be barely insulating you and you're going to get cold. In warmer temperatures, this is no problem, but it's something to keep in mind as temperatures drop. Part of the solution to this is to just get a more comfortable or warmer sleeping pad, and I'll have 2 recommendations at the end of this video for my 2 favorite comfortable sleeping pads. When it gets really cold out, it makes sense that you just want to bury inside of your sleeping bag or quilt, covering up your head and getting nice and cozy. But don't do it. You exhale up to a liter of water over the course of the night. And if you're exhaling that directly into your sleeping bag, it's going to compromise the insulation, especially if that insulation is down. The colder it is, the more water vapor you exhale as well, which compounds the issue. I was recently on a trip where someone ran into this issue on night 1. They were very cold, even though based on the conditions and the sleep system that they had, they shouldn't have been cold. They should have been toasty warm. After diagnosing the problem as them breathing into their sleeping bag and compromising the insulation, I gave them 2 tips in order to fix this problem. And the tips worked like a charm, and they were warm on night 2, even though the temperature and the conditions were the exact same. The 2 tips were, number 1, using a buff to keep their mouth and face warm so that they didn't feel like they had to bury their face inside of their sleeping bag. And then tip 2 was cinching the hood around their sleeping bag so it's just covering up everything except their nose and their mouth, and then breathing through that hole. That allowed the moisture from their breath to get outside the sleeping bag system or slightly accumulate on the outside of their bag, but not compromise the insulation on the inside. Something that I found really affects my sleep is hydration. When I was fast packing the Rockwell Trail, I was not properly hydrated, and that led to a pretty miserable sleep. Part of it was just not consuming enough water, but another part of it was that I wasn't replenishing my electrolytes sufficiently. That's where the sponsor of today's video, Element, comes into play. I'm a heavy sweater, and Element has some of the most sodium per packet out of any electrolyte supplement out there. It's enough at 1,000 milligrams per packet that I actually notice a difference when exerting myself on a trip like the fast packing trip. I love that Element tastes good. They have a bunch of amazing flavors, which encourages me to drink more water when I'm having troubles getting water down. You can check Element out at the links in the video description or head to drinklmnt.com/JustinOutdoors to get your free sample with any purchase. You get into bed and then toss and turn because all of your muscles feel tight and you just can't get comfortable. This happens to me a lot, especially on trips where I'm really pushing myself and pushing my body to its limits, because it's tempting to just get to camp, pull out the chair, take a load off, have a seat. But the solution to this problem is to stretch. But where I found the biggest relief is from stretching my glutes and my hips. I find that 99% of the problems with tightness when I'm trying to sleep comes from my hips and my glutes, because I'll lay on my side and I'll tuck my knees up into my body in order to try and relieve the tightness in the hips, but then that will really kind of aggravate my glutes. So then I'll flip onto my back and lay on my back, which kind of loosens up my glutes, but then that really aggravates my hips. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation unless you get a really good stretch in before you go to bed. To stretch out my hips, I like to just kind of do a little lunge with my knee on the ground in order to stretch out the hip really nicely. I love this stretch. And then to stretch out my glute, I put one leg over the other and then adjust my knee in order to get a nice stretch throughout the glute. If you've ever woken up with a kink in your neck, it's likely because your pillow is too short, especially if you're a side sleeper. If your pillow is too short, it could also lead to more pressure on your shoulder, which will just make your sleeps even more uncomfortable. I have 2 solutions for you, with the first one being just get a taller pillow. I have 2 options for you that I really like with the Xped Mega Pillow being one, if you don't really care about weight, it's really comfortable, it's nice and wide and has a good height to it. If you're more on the ultralight side of things, and the Big Sky Dream Sleeper is a great pillow that I've been experimenting with. I add these Z-Packs patches with loops on them and then a piece of shot cord in order to create a pad strap. This pillow has really good height to it, pretty much the same as the X-Pad Mega Pillow, and is more comfortable than it looks. The second solution is to take whatever pillow you have that is too short for you and then stuff a sit pad underneath it or some extra clothes if you have them. If you don't have either of those things, then you can use your shoes or your pack in a pinch. Fellow campers can be noisy, but so can nature. I'm a really light sleeper, and any noise that's around me can wake me up and cause me to get a bad night's sleep. I'm also pretty sensitive to light. I'm a delicate, sensitive flower, okay? So I've developed a mini deprivation chamber in order to help myself sleep better. Here's how I do it in the backcountry using two key items. First of all, it's basically the toque that I have on my head. I've just made sure that I've gotten one that's long enough. So one that has like a roll up cuff is really useful. And then when I go to sleep, I just pull it down over my eyes. It also keeps my nose warm and it blocks out pretty much all of the light. The second thing that I use are earplugs. Some people say that using earplugs in the backcountry is a safety concern, but it doesn't block out 100% of the sound. It's enough that it's going to block out sound that would normally wake me up unless something's breaking into my tent or is really something that's dangerous. If it's a dangerous thing, then I'm probably going to hear it. If you're looking for the most comfortable sleeping pad, go check out the REI Helix sleeping pad or the Sea to Summit Etherlight XT. The gist of it is that the Helix is warmer, but also heavier, whereas the Etherlight XT is lighter, easier to use, but not as warm. Go check out this video if you want to see rising and falling trends from 2023. Spoiler, one of them has to do with ultralight sleeping pads, and one of them might trigger you a little bit.